It is the biggest bill to hit Washington in the last 40 years. Today we're going to be talking about the infrastructure bill from Washington and what that means for you and me, plus my own personal opinions. It's going to be good. Roll the intro. What's going on, everybody? It's good to see you all. Just quick notifications here. We're going to be talking about the infrastructure bill. If anyone seems like I'm a little off, that I'm not quite on my game, well, long story short, my head feels like a basketball because the Midwest suddenly just transitioned into winter, and nature hates me right now. I'm actually quite a bit messed up with that. But let's get into it. So, infrastructure bill has been passed in the House and the Senate. Biden's absolutely going to sign it, so we can pretty much just write this one off. He's not going to veto it. So what's in it? What is it? Long story short is I want to start with the politics first, because I'm very upset with this, actually. And you're going to see this if anyone did not check out the conversation episode regarding the infrastructure bill, any of that. I'm going to give you my own personal thoughts summed up here. I'm very upset, and I'm very upset for a lot of different reasons and a lot of different actors. First and foremost, I don't feel like it's actually big enough. We'll talk about this in the details, but believe me, while I'm more physically conservative, there are certain things that I think we need to spend some serious money on. Infrastructure is just the number one. Like, we need to be dropping some hard money, and even though this is quite a substantial size bill, it's not enough. It just blatantly isn't enough. It's very limited in focus. I'm very upset with the Republican Party on this one because they're going to be taking victory laps over this on so many levels. And in the reality and the situation that we're in is that they didn't even vote for it. So let me just put it this way. Infrastructure bill was supposed to largely be hook, line, and sinker, and with the Build Back Better bill, which was going to be a massive amount of government spending into social programs and social welfare. Basically, it's the SOCDEM overhaul, right, for our generation. Well, that's largely just been nixed, and so we end up getting just the infrastructure bill. What I expect is going to happen with this in a nutshell is that the Democrats just signed their death warrant for 22 and for 24, because there is no way in hell that they're going to get the Build Back Better bill. And that is what they need for their voters to get them to keep turning out, because Democratic voters are always a little bit more flaky in the off-year elections as it is, but going into where we're at is that they were in a certain situation to where they really needed to hit out of the park with this sweep in 2020. They've got a huge coalition, and they have to hold this thing together. If they don't show up and they don't knock it out of the park for most of their coalition, it isn't going to work. Now, granted, their coalition is moderates who think the social spending bill is too big, and you've got progressives that think, the compromises were all too small. I'm not going to touch that. That's not my camp. What I will touch, and what I really need to get into, is where the Republicans are. Republicans just took this one and took it to court and won. Or, I'm sorry, not took it to the court, but they took it onto the court and won, is what I mean. And that's a basketball reference. They didn't even vote for the damn thing. Outside of, 13 House members and, 2 senators, I think? I have to check. I apologize for that. Don't remember. That was 2 months ago. Anyway, the problem that I have is that this is literally 90% of what the Republican Party wanted. And on top of which is that this is something that they all agreed with. This was the original intent that the Republicans wanted. We wanted the infrastructure bill, and only the infrastructure bill. And they got 90% out of the bill what they wanted. Like the EV vehicles, I think it was the only thing they really cared about. So maybe 80% as far as this as the spending. The Republicans didn't vote for it. Okay, I lean Republican. I lean right wing. Regardless of all the things, we've talked about this. I want the Republican Party to be sensible, effective, kick-ass. And this is not what that is. Okay? We actually could have had a bipartisan support here. You could have stolen the credibility of Biden and you said, like, no, they passed it with us, not without us. You could have gone something like that. You could have literally just destroyed your main political opposition, being the progressive movement. You could have really shown the American people that you were there for them. But instead, they're playing the hyper-partisan line that we brought them down to nothing. I'm like, no, if you brought them down to nothing and you got what you wanted, sign the damn bill. Vote for it. Hell, you had Mitch McConnell vote for the thing. Right? Which is kind of like the old guard party leader. Now, I get it. MAGA is just my side or else, but fuck MAGA. God, I hate these people. They're stupid as hell. This bill will be paying for itself 30 years from now. It's a wonderful bill. Should have signed on for it. I'm almost to the point where I'm thinking about voting Democrat again. Because if the Democrats are actually going to get the key points that actually matter, that are going to help people's lives 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now, then I'll vote for them over this hyper-partisan shit where you get what you want, but you don't even fucking put your name on it because of partisanship. Republicans, we have got to step up your fucking game. Whatever. I'll happily sign on for this ticket, but we got to help the American people get what they need. I'm 100% behind not doing the whole social sock dim shit. But if we get what we want, sign on for the damn thing, because it isn't Biden's victory or the Democratic's victory, it's the American victory. America still comes first. Okay, I'm done with the politics. Oh, okay, just the one final note. I feel bad, though, because even if I'm considering voting for the Democrats, this is probably the end of their coalition in the way that they built it out. They will probably absolutely lose the 22 elections. I think I already talked about this a little bit, actually. They'll probably lose the 22 elections because they're not going to get the bigger bill. They're going to lose the 24 elections because their voter base is just going to, like, slowly disintegrate as they fight more and more and more. And since they didn't get enough done, you'll have the far left just... some of them will still show up, but there's going to be a few that are going to stay home because what do they do for us? Or they got the liberal agenda, not the progressive agenda. And the moderates are going to be largely semi-happy, but it still puts them in the wind because the moderates, largely they got what they wanted. The moderates are still likely to vote Dem, but we have to see where that goes, because then you've got the CRT shit, which is showing in Virginia and New Jersey. It flipped Virginia governorship, and then New Jersey, it almost flipped that. Anyway, let's table that. Let's get into what the details are. So, a lot of people have been throwing out different numbers about what all this thing is. Well, I'm just going to read it verbatim here. It was overall supposed to be a price tag of $1.2 trillion. I'm sorry, that's... I need to change that alarm still. New phone. Okay. $1.2 trillion over the next 8 years. Not quite. It's actually about $550 billion. And if you want to get into it, about half of it's already paid for. Okay, about $550 billion in new appropriations over the next 5 years over previously anticipated spending for reauthorizations for existing programs. About $205 billion of the bill is financed and repurposed for unspent COVID-19 relief dollars. We really did shove out the money for COVID. A few other things here about how it's going to pay for, particularly hitting cryptocurrency in the IRS. Not exactly anything I really want to touch and get into. They are expecting $56 billion in economic growth due to a 33% return on investment from infrastructure projects themselves. This gets into weird, or like how much the multiplier effect gets into, because I think it's a bit of a joke, but there is a level of that where that's true. But what I really see happening from this is that this thing's not going to be paying it for itself 2, 3, 4 years from now. It's really going to be paying for itself 7, 9, 11, 15 years from now. And that is because it takes time for some of these things to happen. Now, here's the real issue. Let's get into the nuts and bolts here. Roads and bridges. Legislation directs about $110 billion in roads, bridges, and other related projects. $36 billion will go to repairing and replacing bridges. There's about 45,000 bridges in the country that are in poor condition, need refurbished. I don't think that's enough money. But anyway, There's also about $1 billion in reconnected communities that were split from past infrastructure projects, such as highways that disrupted neighborhoods. Largely what happened is that you had communities that were split apart by like a highway or a freeway, but there was no way to get under the freeway with reliable consistency, because you literally would have literally just blocks that you could walk to, and now you've got a massive freeway that doesn't have a way of getting across there because it was built at ground level. Sometimes you have like giant overpasses and whatnot, but that's a highly trafficked thoroughfare. It's not safe for people. Okay. The better part of $70 billion is going to go into roads. Probably construction. We're going to talk about this as we wrap up, where that's going to go, but it's not enough. Railroads. The bill gives $60 billion in new transportation spending for U.S. passenger rail system upgrades, maintenance, and safety efforts. Oh my God, I hate this. Okay, the bill gives about $6.5 billion towards Amtrak's Northeast Corridor specifically, which stretches from D.C. to Boston and receives heavy usage. This is true. This is Accelerate Express. The bill also provides $16 billion for Amtrak National Network overhaul to modernize stations, upgrade crossings, fencings, technology to prevent collisions, and increase safety. Oh my God. Okay, here's the problem. Amtrak sucks. Okay? Not that I don't appreciate Amtrak. We do not have a nation built out for Amtrak. We don't have a nation that makes Amtrak profitable. Amtrak works in very specific places, and if you're not running on those very specific places, it's a money sink. And I get it. It looks congressionally, it looks good, and optically it looks good. Not a lot of people use it, because if they need to get anywhere time sensitive, what they're going to do is they're going to get on a plane. If they need to get somewhere long haul, more often than not, they're going to take a car. It's very few people that actually use Amtrak. That's why it doesn't make money. Okay? There's few places it does. I talk about the Accelerate Express. I don't like this project because it's expensive as holy hell. But the Northeast Corridor high-speed rail project, if they get off the ground, is estimated somewhere between $40 and $100 billion. Low end was 40, but every time we look at California, they keep blowing up records, and so we're just estimating high end that's what's going to be. I will trade the Democrats to have the Northeast Corridor project if the Midwest and the Republicans can get that kind of money for our infrastructure projects throughout the Midwest, particularly our interstates. We're still going to get there. But in a nutshell, what I want to get here is that will work for them. They absolutely do need it. That's going to cut down on air travel. It's going to cut down on time of function, and they actually have, to some degree, but not perfectly, the public transportation that you can facilitate that. And anything that they don't have, they can actually build out on and plan on. I'm not going to say they are, and they have Northeast Corridor has some serious workings to do on how they're going to run their societies moving forward, because they're screwing it up. But if they want to reinvest in their communities, if they want to make things new and fresh, this is a good start. So if they are going to put money into that, go for it. I don't see that actually end up being the end case. It's just not enough money. But at least that's where it goes. To back that up, public transit. The bill sets aside $39 billion to repair and modernize accessibility of the nation's public transportation infrastructure. $4.75 billion of that is for maintenance, replacement, repairs of public transit buses and railways that are in poor condition. It's for the city folks. Not my coalition, but number one, largely Democrat bill, and two, you gotta give and take. They need this, great, and if they're actually going to do high-speed rail, they absolutely have to do that pushing forward. Airports and waterways. The bill includes $25 billion for repairing the nation's airports and efforts to reduce emissions. It also invests about $17 billion in waterways and port infrastructure. All that's necessary, but there's some serious conversations on how that works. I think most of that's actually for the air part is actually more of a bailout program to help the airlines modernize their fleet. Because they're not only having shortages, but some of the engines are still a little bit old now, antiquated. Obviously, the 737 MAX 8 had some issues. They had they're having issues with that plane. Eventually, Airbus 320 is the big name in the business, and they want the aircraft companies to have some competition, but they also want the airline companies to have some competition, and they're having real trouble outside of running specialized routes. Yeah. Electric vehicles. The bill includes $5 billion for increasing the number of electric vehicle charging stations across the nation. I fucking hate this. We already talked about this in green energy, and until you actually have real green energy running all this shit, which is largely just nukes, this is not a good idea. Like the lithium's bad enough. Getting the batteries is incredibly, incredibly carbon intensive, incredibly pollutant as well. You got to build all the other stuff first, and you got to figure out how to make batteries way better. Road safety, $11 billion into transportation safety programming, $5 billion into safe streets for all. Sure. I don't know exactly what all that is, but road safety does help. Largely, I would assume some of that's like guide rails on the side of the roads or safety features. Largely these are crash safety features. They don't keep you from going in the oncoming lane, stuff like that. Let's finish knocking this out. Power infrastructure, $65 billion for upgrading power grids that are outdated and inefficient. The funds will go to supporting thousands of miles of new power lines for renewable energy. $3.5 billion on upgrading low-income housing to be more energy efficient. Yes, no. Some of this green energy stuff doesn't work. Solar's still a bastard. Wind energy's getting there, definitely, but I think this is the wrong investment. They probably would have been better off investing in the actual green energy, but that's more of Build Back Better. Broadband. The bill invests $65 billion in making high-speed internet more accessible for Americans, particularly in rural areas and others where households do not have easy access to broadband. This is largely for the Republican side of this. We got some stuff for the cities when it came to public transportation. This is largely for accessing areas that do not have reliable access to the internet. We're talking largely areas that are less than 10 MBS, so megabits per second. These are largely rural communities. This is going to be there to lay out new fiber lines and new wireless networks so that you can have reliable and consistent communication. Water infrastructure, $55 billion goes into ensuring clean drinking water for the Americans. Yeah. This is basically to not have another Flint. It's not enough, actually. They need to probably jump about $200 billion into this project, but it's a start. We can at least get some of these rolling, particularly for poor and impoverished communities. This will largely be a win for the Dems, but hey, you know what? Go for it. Resilience. The bill authorized $50 billion to protect the electric grid against extreme weather conditions and climate, such as wildfires, flood, and other natural disasters. Hello, Texas! Let's have a chat, shall we? Yeah. This is actually this is also a California conversation. Hi, PG&E. Can you please learn to bury your power lines yet? That'd be great. Yeah, there's a few other things, crime and provisions, but we're getting into the multi-million-dollar things. So, let me talk about this in a nutshell. There's going to be a lot of projects come out of this, but there's a problem. Most of this altogether overarching is not going to be new projects. They're going to be refurbs and refurbishments. This is my problem with this bill in a nutshell. It actually isn't that big because we've got a lot that needs replaced, a lot that needs upgraded, and a lot of new stuff that needs to be constructed. Over the next couple of days, you're going to be watching new content about all the other projects that we really need to invest in and are at least trying to. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of an overhaul as we finish out here. This is the Interstate Corridors map that was mapped out for 1991. You'll notice some of these are done. Some of these haven't even been finished or started yet. We're going to rapid fire this real quick. We're going to talk about this. The Interstate Program was largely finished in 1992. In 1981, they passed the National Highway Administration Act or something like that. I can't remember exactly the wording of it, but it was basically an outline for what Interstate 2 was going to be, or the expansion of the interstate system. Well, there's a little bit of a problem here. In a nutshell, is that it provided all the corridors that were going to be the new interstates outside of 2. We'll get to that. But it didn't provide any funding, unlike the original interstate program. So the original interstate program still funds the maintenance of everything that we've built out to this point, more or less. The problem is is that this new program that they are illustrated here on your map is that it didn't provide funding to build any of this. And so if any of it has been built or upgraded, it's all been done at the particular state's expense. Okay, let's rapid fire these. We'll wrap it up because we'll be talking about these each, largely the major projects here we'll be talking about as we go on. Corridor 54. This is actually California's Route 99, or if you will, California State Highway 99. Absolutely great corridor. This was originally earmarked to be Interstate 7. It's now going to be Interstate 9. I have no problem with this technically being interstate, but I don't think it validates the spirit very much because it's going to be exclusively a California-based interstate. Now, granted, we usually have short-line interstates, but they're largely spurs. This one is going to be over 300, or almost over 200 miles, almost 250 to 300, depending on how far they take it. Yeah. I'm not super thrilled with this one, but you know, it's California. They want the money, and you know what? 40 million people. We got to give them some. Okay, next one. Corridor 68, Corridor 26 that was outlined. This is actually the Interstate 11 program. We'll definitely be talking about this. They got the main thoroughfare between Arizona and Nevada built out. This is the big bridge that is right next to the Hoover Dam as the main bypass because everything had to go over that originally, or over the dam. And so that was actually, for a tourist spot, was one of the most heavily attractive areas in the whole region. And so they actually have a rapid action, basically it's a 4-lane bridge, interstate quality, that you can now cross over and now, is reliable, fast, and speedy lines of communication between Las Vegas and Arizona. This has actually been a net win overall, and they have basically eyed this out to expand it all the way up through the corridor. I can't remember what highway this is actually taking over, but it's going to go to I-80 just outside of Reno, all the way down into Phoenix, and then largely it will overlap with Tucson and I-10. And so, in a nutshell here, this is largely the American Southwest Interstate. Las Vegas to Phoenix, corridor 26 part of it makes perfect sense. Getting up into I-80, I get it, but there's nothing there, man. So, not 100% sold on that particular front, but let's move on. Next one is one that has been added in 2 bills. First one was in 2015, I think. I can't remember exactly, but it has been part of the infrastructure bill that has actually been approved was greenlighting this corridor. This is the I-14 project. Now, I don't expect that this is going to get any funding, and I don't expect it to get off the ground anytime exactly soon, but it's been earmarked so that whenever people start having the conversations about doing studies for this, everyone knows, hey, we're going to have an interstate through here, and this is the general place where it's going to be, and we need to start figuring out how to get that built. Don't expect that today, but expect that in the years to come. I will talk about that a little bit. Corridor 1 and Corridor 37. This is the extension of I-49. I-49 from the junction with I-10 all the way around to New Orleans. This is not a high priority thing. It probably will get done sooner or later, probably later, but this is not the important part. It's Corridor 1. This is Kansas City all the way down to Shreveport. Louisiana. Yes, this is getting built. Missouri and Arkansas have been putting some serious money and funding to getting that done. It goes through some pretty crappy parts of the country. Or not crappy parts, I apologize. It's the terrain is pretty rough. They're building in some pretty rugged terrain in the middle of the continent. And so it will connect some serious places. A lot of people are really got eyes on this particular project. It's been worked on even without federal funding. But now that this is greenlit, I expect that one of the biggest priorities is going to get that finish. Another one. This was already earmarked, but it's not on this map. It is the I-57 extension project in Missouri and Arkansas. It'll largely go from Sykeston all the way down to Little Rock. This is absolutely on everybody's radar. Tennessee wants this. Illinois wants this. Missouri wants this. Arkansas wants this. And Texas wants this. It basically gives an entirely new direction to get into the Dallas-Fort Worth area, because one of the big problems that they're having is I-55 all the way down to I-40 is absolutely clogged. and this will give a relief valve. So unless you're actually not going straight south down to Memphis, is that you can now yeet over yourself all the way down to Little Rock, and it makes it a way easier to get in the south if you're going that direction. We're definitely going to get there. Why? Because they even are earmarked another interstate to largely serve as the gateway into Houston. This is Corridor 18, otherwise known as the I-69 program. Shout out to Kentucky and Indiana. We've got almost all of our stuff done outside of a few examples. Indiana will be done by 2024. Kentucky will finish up with us because they only need to have a bridge. Everyone else, outside of one state outside of Houston, hasn't even been started yet. Good job, guys. Corridor 3 we won't talk about. Corridor 5 is the extension project of I-74. There is still some talkings about how it's going to go through southern Ohio, but this is largely going to be the project that links North Carolina into the Midwest Basin, which is going to be weird, but yeah, apparently they're going to do that. Whatever. Other one, the project, or Corridor 57, ended up being the upgrading of US 41 to I-41. Don't know why that's the case, but hey, whatever. The Corridor 45 and Corridor 42 programs are done. I think this is actually I-44. Don't correct me wrong, but this is Montgomery over to Memphis and a place just south of there. So yeah, that largely wraps us up. There might be a few things that I'm going to be talking about as we get into it, but the long story short is to wrap this all up nice and tidy, is that this next week we're going to be talking about the major infrastructure programs that are coming down the pipe that you guys are probably going to be looking out for, and if you're in any of these general areas, you are probably going to see at least some funding go to that. Without further ado, I've been Tyberius D. Good to see you, and we'll catch you next time.